Halloween is a holiday that combines fun costume parties, homes decorated with eerie decor, jack-o'-lanterns, and children trick-or-treating at neighbors' doors. Scary stories, ghosts, evil forces that come out to people on this day. However, of course, everyone understands that these are just made-up tales. For New Jersey native Stephanie Parz, the week of Halloween in 2019 turned into a real nightmare. First, an illness that nearly took Stephanie to the other side, then a dead bird and smeared handprints on the bathroom mirror. For the 25-year-old girl living in a big house all alone, these were bad omens, and unfortunately, the invented horrors of the holiday turned into gruesome reality. Help this channel grow. Like the video, try the new hype feature, leave a comment, and subscribe for more stories. This helps us a lot. Thank you. Back in 1982, Edward Parz met his destiny. Her name was Charlene Quinn. Ed and Charlene were high school students. The young man was into art classes, and on the very first day noticed the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. It was love at first sight. But the senior girl didn't even look in his direction, which only drew more of his attention. One day, Parz unexpectedly stood up, walked over to the girl, and sat next to her. When Charlene gave him a surprised look, the young man said he didn't bite, and by the way, his name was Ed. That's how their friendship began, smoothly transforming into a passionate romance. After graduating high school, the young man got a job in security, and his girlfriend got a job as an operator at a telephone company. Charlene and Ed's wedding took place on September 15, 1991, in the Chapel of St. Rose of Lima in Freehold, New Jersey. Looking at the newlyweds, one could confidently say that a wonderful life together awaited them. And so, it happened. Charlene continued working in customer support, while Ed was now an emergency services operator in the sheriff's department and a volunteer rescuer. The man also founded his own limousine rental company. Soon, Charlene learned she was pregnant. On February 19, 1994, the couple had their firstborn, a girl named Stephanie Nicole Parz, a little bundle of joy that gave Ed and Charlene the new status of mom and dad. In the following years, the Parz family grew with 3 more daughters, Brianna, Carissa, and Haley. Despite being surrounded by girls, it didn't stop Ed from becoming the best dad in the world. The young man's entire life now revolved around spending as much time as possible with his little ones. Every day, the Parz family gathered in the big room and played board games. On vacations, Ed and Charlene took the kids fishing, went hiking in the woods with the girls, relaxed on the beach, or did rafting events. They visited the world of Disney, staying in the Magic Kingdom, Animal Kingdom, and the amusement park. Every year before Christmas, Ed and the girls decorated the house with twinkling garlands, put figures in the yard, and participated in the contest for the most magical holiday light show. The Parz family lived in a nice little 2-story house at the very end of the street. Their home was visible from afar thanks to the huge number of blinking garlands and all sorts of decorations. It was in this captivating atmosphere of parental love and care, with the support of her younger sisters, that Stephanie's bold, extroverted personality was formed. Friends and relatives called her a firework. She grew up confident, unafraid of others' opinions, stubborn and independent, yet generous, loyal, and with a positive outlook on the world. Family activities led her to love sports. Stephanie joined the school softball team. With her father, they regularly attended baseball games and cheered for the local hockey team together. She often played bowling with her sisters. Sports became her way to connect with the people around her. With her mom, Charlene, Stephanie loved shopping for shoes and adding to her collection of new models. She also held a special place in her heart for her dog named Jasmine. But her true passion was art. She loved drawing, painting ceramic sculptures, and creating illustrations for scary stories. As she got older, her passion for visual arts found an outlet in makeup. After high school, Stephanie enrolled in cosmetology school. It was a rigorous program specializing in makeup, skincare, nails, waxing, and hair care. To get a cosmetology license in New Jersey, she had to complete 1,200 hours of training, so it took a full year. Stephanie was talented. In cosmetology school, her creative abilities showed not only in her professional work, but also in her unconventional appearance. She dyed her hair in all the colors of the rainbow, wore bright, shiny outfits, earrings, rings, piercings, and did striking makeup. With the development of the internet, the girl was able to make a living by growing her YouTube channel, where she demonstrated new looks on camera and created her own cosmetic brand. It was in cosmetology school that Steph met her boyfriend, Tom Senatore, who was studying to be a hairstylist. Tom was just her type. Light blue eyes, dark hair, tongue piercing, and tattoos all over his body. Outwardly, he exuded a bad boy vibe, but he was very sweet. They started dating in October 2013, going to concerts and festivals together, hanging out at the beach, in nightclubs, and cheering for the local hockey team. Tom Senatore shared Steph's passion for cosmetology, fitness, family adventures, and nightlife. They developed a serious relationship based on support and common interests. Soon, Stephanie got a job at a nail salon, and she continued to perfect her makeup techniques on her younger sisters. In 2015, Parz enrolled in the School of Art with a major in fine and applied arts. She created an account called Wild Rose Art on social media, where she sold clay jewelry. 5 of her works were nominated for the Spring Art Award and exhibited in an art gallery. In 2016, Stephanie took advanced cosmetology courses at the Makeup Academy and got a job at a beauty salon, specializing in brow and lash services. Then her dream came true. Stephanie was invited to do makeup for New York Fashion Week. For her developing career, this was a huge achievement. She created her own brand, called CNP, from the first letters of her name, and continued experimenting with special effects makeup and promoting her services on social media. Parz's main goal was to do what she loved while one day becoming her own boss. And the girl did everything to achieve her goals. Stephanie often posted photos with her boyfriend on her internet page. She wrote touching captions, thanking her guy for help and support, and confessing her love. Despite some difficulties in their life together, in October 2016, Tom and Stephanie celebrated their 3-year anniversary. But after Valentine's Day in 2017, the young people broke up, remaining friends. Stephanie, who dreamed of spending her whole life with Tom, was devastated. She had to move in with her grandmother, who was suffering from a terminal illness. The girl was forced to become the main caregiver for the elderly woman. Now she had to juggle work, studies, and constant care for her sick grandmother. In 2017, Parz launched another YouTube channel where she gave lessons on all types of makeup. Her signature was looks from horror movies like Pennywise, Joker, Coraline, and others. By adding bright accents to monster characters, Steph created unique, glamorous makeup. She knew how to make the most realistic and grotesque wounds on people's faces and hands using special effects makeup. Her services were especially in demand at themed parties and during Halloween. She considered her calling to be a special effects artist, as she had a special talent for it. Stephanie's career was also moving forward. She worked as a makeup artist, manager, and waxing specialist in various salons and continued taking additional advanced courses. Given her love for children, she also babysat, looking after a neighbor's girl. In 2018, the grandmother Parz had been caring for passed away and left Stephanie her house and pets. The home was just a 10-minute drive from her parents' house. There was more than enough space for a single girl, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a beautiful large outdoor terrace, and a very big backyard, perfect for walking dogs. At first, Stephanie eased her loneliness by communicating with the animals left in her care after her grandmother's death. But animals couldn't replace human interaction for the young girl. Soon, she started dating a guy named Michael Arano. Stephanie's new boyfriend worked as a roofer. He was a tall young man with curly chestnut hair and a wide smile. They bonded over their love of hockey, but the romance didn't last long. At some point, Parz realized she needed a completely different man. She told Michael that, and after breaking up, she tried to focus on her work again. Plus, Stephanie had gained weight in recent months and decided it was time to take care of herself. After the breakup, Michael insisted he still loved Stephanie, but the girl wasn't going to change her decision, feeling she wouldn't be happy with him. The thing was, Parz was looking for more than just a boyfriend. She was at the age when she was seriously thinking about starting a family and having children. She had a wonderful example in Ed and Charlene, and she wouldn't settle for less. Once again, without a partner's support, Steph desperately turned to dating apps. Her father, Edward, was not thrilled with what his eldest daughter had come up with. The man worked in the sheriff's department, and like no one else, knew how scary and unpredictable the consequences of online dating could be. The family policy of Charlene and Ed was that their daughters should never allow their partners to pressure them, publicly humiliate them, touch them inappropriately without permission, or anything like that, let alone a man raising his hand against his woman. The parents wanted only happy relationships for their girls, based on love and mutual trust. Mom and Dad had tried to show this by personal example since childhood. Ed convinced his eldest daughter to be very careful with online dating. You never know for sure who's on the other side of the screen, to which Stephanie laughed and told her father he was just getting old and too cautious. In 25-year-old Stephanie's opinion, she needed to find a guy quickly before she got too old. One of her younger sisters had recently had a baby, and Steph didn't even have a suitable boyfriend, though the girl was already ready to start a real family and have her own children. It was hard for her father to argue because he met Charlene in high school and couldn't fully understand his daughter's worries since he hadn't been in her situation. Nevertheless, he tried to convey to Steph the importance of trust and respect in relationships with a young man. Meanwhile, Stephanie continued swiping through men's profiles on dating apps. She liked getting attention and compliments from guys. Before going on a date with someone, the girl communicated with the candidate via messages for several weeks to get to know him better. That's how she met 29-year-old John Osbilen. At first, the young people chatted in a messenger. John told her about himself, saying he worked as a stockbroker in Staten Island. The guy was a romantic and knew exactly how to win over a girl he liked. Plus, he was older than her previous boyfriends, meaning he had more serious intentions. At least that's what Stephanie thought when she agreed to go on a date with him. When they finally met, Osbilen was exactly as he described himself. Tall, handsome man with a stable job who could provide not only for himself, but also for his future family. The young people gradually got to know each other, had dinners, went to the beach, and walked. However, after just a few meetings, Stephanie felt they were too different. John was overly emotional. They didn't agree on some things at all, and that angered Osbilen. After several outbursts of anger, Stephanie decided it would be better to distance herself from him and returned to the dating app. In August 2019, Stephanie woke up in the middle of the night unable to breathe. It seemed like her lungs were filled with fluid. The girl was seriously scared. She immediately called her parents, and her father took her to the hospital, where she was diagnosed with an infection and severe pneumonia in both lungs. Pneumonia can be fatal, but it's rare. However, Stephanie nearly died. She spent several days in a hospital bed, scaring her loved ones. On August 9th, dressed in a hospital gown and connected to a breathing device, Stephanie addressed her subscribers and talked about the consequences of vaping. She said she almost lost her life and urged others to quit. This appeal showed Stephanie's empathy and care for others. She described how hard the first days were. She didn't even have the strength to turn over in bed. She had to call the nurse. And all this turned out to be from the harmful habit. Besides her parents and sisters, the guy she had broken up with shortly before, John Osbilen, visited Stephanie in the hospital. He offered help and let her know he wanted to be there. The young man kept his word. Every day he visited Stephanie, brought flowers and treats, listened to her fears. Stephanie realized she really mattered to John, and that made her happy. When Parz recovered and was discharged from the hospital, she and John went on a weekend trip to Atlantic City to relax on the beach. In the hotel room, Osbilen officially asked Stephanie to be his girlfriend, hiding a note among the drinks, and she agreed without hesitation. The girl's parents, unlike her, were not thrilled with her choice. The guy didn't appeal to them from the first meeting, though there seemed to be no objective reason, and the dislike was mutual. John sabotaged joint vacations and Stephanie's relationship with her family in every way. As soon as they started dating, the girl appeared less often at her parents' house. Ed and Charlene were honest people, so they told their daughter they didn't really like her boyfriend. Stephanie tried to defend John, blaming it on his shyness, while highly valuing her family's opinion. At first, the romance with Osbilen really seemed like a fairy tale to her. The girl was in love, and her social media flourished along with her personal life. Stephanie's makeup skills were in high demand. Subscribers and followers noticed her offline. Parz's talent spoke for itself, but Stephanie's YouTube career and attention from others began to irritate John. He didn't like that the girl spent a lot of time recording videos, communicating on social media, and didn't want to share her with anyone. So Stephanie had to set priorities. Over time, the relationship with John deteriorated again, and by the end of September, Parz's social media status changed to single. Now the girl wasn't rushing into new relationships. She spent more time with her family and newborn nephew. Plus, the neighbors asked her again to babysit their child, which she gladly agreed to. October came, and Halloween was approaching. During this period, creepy things started happening to Stephanie, making her feel unsafe in her own home. The girl called her mom and said her grandmother's house was haunted. Parz was sure the place was possessed by an evil spirit. Otherwise, who could be causing mischief in a locked room? One evening, returning from work, Stephanie found several handprints on the bathroom mirror. They were smeared across the glass in a strange pattern and looked more like Slender Man's long, thin fingers, a fictional character. The girl even shared a video on social media. Naturally, Stephanie was scared. She hadn't left handprints on the mirror and couldn't understand who did it. She washed the surface and tried to forget the incident. But a couple of days later, the girl came home and found one of her parrots on the cage floor. The poor bird was dead. There were no signs the day before that the parrot was sick. The sudden death of the bird made Stephanie panic. She even borrowed a baby monitor from her sister for a while and placed it near the front door to hear from the bedroom what was happening in the hallway. Stephanie couldn't be called a coward. It was just the combination of the creepy holiday atmosphere and strange events that caused her some panic. Living alone in a house where someone had recently died was quite a challenge. The closer Halloween got, the more her fear grew. As if on the eve of the holiday, dark forces could not just scare, but really harm the young homeowner. Perhaps deep down, Steph felt danger was looming. 3 weeks after the mirror handprints and the bird incident, on October 30th, 2019, the day before Halloween, Stephanie went with her sisters and mom to a psychic show. They wanted to see firsthand how a medium contacted the spirit world and predicted the future. Of all the Parz women, only the youngest sister, Carissa, was lucky. The medium singled her out from the crowd and read her future. An excited Steph told her subscribers on social media how the psychic predicted success for her sister in the future, but a heavy grief in the near future, some serious loss that would completely change her life. Carissa was doing well in school, dating a guy she was in love with, so she had no idea what the medium was talking about. For people not into esotericism and not believing in clairvoyance, such a prediction might seem like generic phrases, and the schoolgirl took it lightly. But the medium's words would haunt Carissa for the rest of her life, because that joint evening before Halloween would be the last time she saw her older sister, Stephanie, alive. After the psychic show, the girls returned to their parents' house, had dinner, chatted a bit more, and those who lived separately went home. Steph kissed her mom goodbye and promised to text when she got home. Her grandmother's house, where Parz lived, was just a 10-minute drive away. Usually, Stephanie used Snapchat to message her mom. On the way, she sent Charlene a photo of their favorite family restaurant, saying they should go there sometime on the weekend. To her mom's question if she got home, the girl didn't reply. Then she ignored several more messages from her parents. Charlene and Ed were sure Stephanie had turned off the sound on her phone during the psychic show and forgot to turn it back on. Probably she was exhausted from the whole day, came home and fell asleep right away, forgetting to write to her parents. The next morning on Halloween, Charlene checked Snapchat again and saw that the messages she sent her daughter the night before were still unread. This was very unlike Steph, so the woman got worried and immediately started calling her cell. Charlene knew that by 7 a.m. her daughter should be at the neighbors where she babysat, but no one answered. Ed and Charlene dropped everything, got in the car, and drove to the grandmother's house. A white Honda Sonata belonging to Stephanie was in the driveway. That meant she still hadn't woken up. Ed stayed in the car, while Charlene headed to the house. She knocked, but got no answer. Then she turned the handle, and the front door opened. The woman cautiously entered, and she was out of sight for a while. When Charlene appeared on the doorstep again, she shook her head anxiously, signaling to her husband that their daughter wasn't there. The fact that the front door was unlocked was alarming enough, especially since Stephanie had been feeling scared lately. But then Charlene discovered that lights were on throughout the house, in both bathrooms, the attic, the garage, and even the basement. It was quiet inside except for the dogs barking. It looked like the girl had walked around the house turning on lights everywhere, checking every room to make sure there were no monsters. The dog was locked in the bathroom, which was also abnormal. Stephanie would never lock up the animal. Charlene let the dog out, then checked her daughter's bedroom, but she wasn't there. The coat and shoes the girl wore to the psychic show were lying next to the couch in the living room. That meant Stephanie had come home, possibly gone to the bedroom, and disappeared the next morning. Overall, the situation was confusing and worrying for the parents. Charlene and Ed went home and started calling the sisters and friends of their eldest daughter, but no one could even reach her. Stephanie wasn't answering anyone. It was strange because she always had her phone with her. Due to her online activities, the girl never parted with her mobile. When Stephanie showed up a few hours later, Mom and Dad were seriously worried. Charlene returned to Stephanie's house with her youngest daughter, Carissa, to look for clues and figure out where the girl might have gone. They carefully inspected the rooms, then checked the nightstand and found a large kitchen knife inside. Apparently, Stephanie was really scared of what was happening in the house to the point of keeping a weapon for protection nearby. At the same time, Charlene couldn't find her daughter's wallet, phone, or keys. But on the piano were leftovers from yesterday's food, what they bought at the show the day before. Where could Stephanie be in such a hurry that she didn't turn off the lights, lock the house, or even put the food in the fridge? Could there be some other creepier reason why the girl wasn't answering calls now? Charlene decided to dial Stephanie's phone number again, and to her surprise, the gadget rang somewhere nearby. The mobile was found between the couch cushions, and that was scary. As mentioned, Steph never parted with her phone, let alone voluntarily leave the house without it. Neither mom nor sister could unlock the phone since it was password protected, but notifications were visible on the lock screen. Stephanie had received many text messages, including one from the woman whose child she was supposed to babysit that morning, meaning the girl didn't show up for work. It was at that moment that Carissa remembered the medium's prediction and realized that her older sister's disappearance was the grief awaiting her in the near future. In a way, the high schooler felt responsible for Steph's disappearance. When Charlene met Ed and told him about the found phone, the father felt an unpleasant burning in his chest. As a sheriff's department employee, he knew that a missing adult report wouldn't be accepted until 24 hours had passed since the disappearance. Though the first hours after a disappearance are the most important, as there's still a chance to prevent the worst outcome. Yet police don't start searches earlier than a day later. However, the parents weren't going to waste precious time. They called all of Stephanie's acquaintances, hoping to stumble upon someone who had seen the girl or knew her whereabouts. Then father and mother searched the neighborhood, showing people her photo. They talked to Stephanie's neighbors. Unfortunately, no one could provide any new information. One of the sisters managed to hack into Stephanie's social media account. She saw several messages from different people, including from ex-boyfriend John Osbilen. He was the last person who wrote to Steph the night before. Some messages were still unread. From what John wrote, it was clear the young man was agitated. He used many emotionally manipulative phrases like, "Where are you? I feel bad. Why are you ignoring me again?" The young man accused Stephanie of ruining their relationship. Obviously, the girl didn't reply because she spent the whole evening with her mom and sisters. Plus, she and John had broken up back in September. Steph's sister, who read all the messages, contacted John from her own social media page and directly asked if he knew where her sister was. Osbilen replied within an hour, saying that on Halloween Eve, he went to Stephanie's house and spent the night with her. At 7 a.m., they woke up, and John went home because the girl was rushing to her babysitting job. He hadn't seen her since, so John was the last person to communicate with Steph before she disappeared. Finally, Mom Charlene called 911 and reported her daughter's disappearance to the dispatcher. The woman said she last saw Stephanie on October 30th at 10 p.m. After that, the daughter didn't call or write that she got home safely, but her car was in the driveway. Charlene added that John Osbilen, the ex-boyfriend, saw Steph the night before and spent the night with her. After parting in the morning, he also hadn't heard from the girl. Fear and panic were audible in the mother's voice. But the detective handling the case calmed the woman, saying police would do everything possible to bring Stephanie home safe and sound. Only his words somehow didn't inspire trust in the mother. Perhaps on a subconscious level, she understood that something terrible had happened, and she would never see her child again. On Monday, November 1st, a team of officers searched Stephanie's house and found no signs of forced entry. If John was telling the truth, perhaps someone else entered the house after he left. At least that would explain why the girl didn't take her phone and didn't lock the front door. By the way, her keys were found in the car. Meanwhile, one of the sisters logged into Steph's social media and posted an appeal to subscribers asking for any information about the girl's whereabouts. By the way, this post got over 600 comments from people worried about Parz's disappearance. Many were concerned that the disappearance coincided with Halloween. Some claimed to have seen the girl in another town. Some suggested contacting a medium or psychic. And some ill-wishers immediately started writing where to look for her body. There were many tips, all very different, but almost all useless. The media instantly picked up the story of the girl who disappeared on Halloween night. It made headlines, and the search for Parz expanded geographically. Now she was being looked for not only in Freehold, but also in nearby towns in the state. Police needed to check all of Stephanie's ex-boyfriends, but first, they wanted to talk to John Osbilen, the last known person to see the girl alive. Detectives requested a warrant to search John's cell phone, computer, and his parents' house, located 13 minutes' drive from where Stephanie lived. There were no signs of the missing girl in the Osbilen home. John himself was fully cooperative. He came to the police station for questioning and told the same story he had told Steph's sister earlier. The detectives listened to the guy, and during the interview noticed some strange scratches on the young man's neck. Reviewing his messages provided additional evidence of John's anger issues and sudden outbursts of aggression. After the breakup on September 23rd, John continued writing to Stephanie, denying the breakup. He was possessive toward her, controlled the ex-girlfriend's actions, and literally bombarded her with messages. Parz could have blocked him, but she was afraid it would only make things worse. Freehold police suspected that when Stephanie didn't reply to her ex's messages because her phone was on silent, John decided to sneak to her house and wait at the door, since he lived nearby and had the opportunity. However, investigators didn't want to jump to conclusions, because besides Osbilen, there were other ex-boyfriends in the girl's life. First, they needed to rule out everyone uninvolved. Detectives considered different scenarios. Did Stephanie leave the house because she was scared by evil spirits? Could she have been kidnapped? Was she being held hostage? Or had the worst scenario happened and the girl was already dead? Stephanie's father, Ed, was also running various versions through his head. His imagination ran so wild that he felt like he was going crazy. The family put up flyers hoping someone might have seen Steph. While law enforcement studied the case materials and tried to determine a specific search area, Parz's parents and friends, about 200 volunteers in total, managed to comb nearby wooded areas, checked trash containers and riverbanks. At one point in the search, they came across a pile of tied black trash bags. The father couldn't bring himself to open them. When one of the men cut the bag, blood poured out. Ed almost fainted, imagining his daughter's body could be inside the bags, but it turned out to be a dead deer. The man thanked God it wasn't his daughter. However, he couldn't shake the horrible thoughts that flooded his mind at the sight of the black bags and blood for a long time. The searches continued. Days passed, investigators got information from John's cell phone and other devices. According to geolocation, the ex-boyfriend did spend Halloween night at Parz's house. The next day, the young man drove toward his work. Everything looked normal, except that he ended up at Clay Pit Ponds Park on the south shore of Staten Island in a marshy nature reserve, located 50 kilometers from Stephanie's home. John stayed there for 6 hours before returning to New Jersey. It all looked suspicious. If the guy decided to get rid of Stephanie's body, it would be an ideal place. A team of 200 law enforcement officers, New York Police canine units, and helicopters were sent to Clay Pit Ponds Park. They combed the area but didn't find the girl's body. But another team of experts found a compromising photo in John's phone related to child abuse. Osbilen claimed he had no idea how the photo got on his phone. Nevertheless, he was detained for possible third-degree child endangerment and temporarily placed in the Monmouth County Correctional Facility. In New Jersey, John faced up to 5 years in prison if found guilty. John Osbilen was born in July 1990 in Brooklyn. His father was a bus driver in New York, and his mother was a cosmetologist. They raised John and his brothers in the Rossville area on the south shore of Staten Island. John graduated high school and became a stockbroker. He was into bodybuilding and was popular with the opposite sex. John's criminal history included 4 different cases. The first was related to his ex-girlfriend from New York, who filed a restraining order against him. Another girl claimed John crossed boundaries during sex and choked her until she passed out. Then, the victim withdrew the complaint, not wanting to face the man in court. In June 2019, a third woman called police about John's aggressive behavior. She complained that he hit her. The fourth complaint against this person came recently, on September 23rd. From the contents of Osbilen's phone, Stephanie was the only one he communicated with in recent months. John was messaging a dozen other women at the same time. Unfortunately, 11 days later, Osbilen was released on bail at his lawyer's request. Police couldn't yet charge him in connection with Stephanie Parz's disappearance since there was no concrete evidence. The short-term consequences of the arrest were that John could no longer use the internet, and he had to find another job since he was fired from his previous one. Charlene and Ed began recalling all events related to John Osbilen. They talked to Steph's friends and learned that the first time the girl broke up with her boyfriend was because he grabbed her by the throat and pinned her against the wall. It caused her to bleed. The next day, Parz ended the relationship but didn't tell her father and mother the truth. If Stephanie hadn't ended up in the hospital with pneumonia later and John hadn't sat by her bed all those days, the girl probably wouldn't have forgiven the guy. John spent every evening with Steph, convincing her to come back, and it worked. On September 23rd, the Parz spouses were about to go to bed when the phone rang. First, Charlene heard a scuffle, then Stephanie's hoarse voice saying John hit her. The call cut off. The mother immediately called 911, and Ed rushed to the car and sped to his daughter's house. When he pulled up on her street, he saw a girl running barefoot in pajamas. It was his daughter Stephanie, covered in blood. Ed stopped the car, picked up his daughter, and sat her in the passenger seat. When they arrived at the house, police were already there. Officers prevented Ed from making a mistake. The enraged father was in a state where he could easily kill his daughter's boyfriend. Osbilen was arrested, and Ed was asked to take Stephanie to the police station so she could file charges. The girl was shocked by what happened. That evening, she filed a complaint, stating that John hit her on the head and arm so hard that she bled. But later, Stephanie told her father she didn't want to press charges to leave it all behind quickly. Ed couldn't understand her reasoning, but Steph was an adult and decided for herself. After such an incident, there could be no talk of a relationship. Parz posted on her social media wall, "Starting over is okay, moving on is okay, saying no is okay, being alone is okay." The girl was taking steps to rebuild her life after her self-esteem was destroyed by a pathetic monster. She didn't know that Osbilen regularly communicated with other women and had no idea that such behavior was normal for him. If someone had warned her, perhaps Stephanie's parents wouldn't be starting every day searching for their daughter now, and most likely the girl would be alive. Ed Parz hated John Osbilen with all his being, who was under house arrest at the time. The father was almost 100% sure that this man was involved in his daughter's disappearance. Unfortunately, Ed himself couldn't do anything about it. He couldn't go and force the scumbag to tell where he put Stephanie. On November 22nd, almost a month after the girl's disappearance, at 4:30 a.m., Ed received an anonymous phone call. The person on the other end said he was dead, then hung up. It took Parz some time to understand the context, but when the meaning sank in, he had a nervous breakdown. He screamed, punched walls, threw things, because now they would never know what happened to Stephanie. The father of the missing girl got in the car and drove to the Osbilen house. Officers already there asked Ed to go home and threatened arrest if he didn't comply. But Parz wanted to know exactly what happened. Did John leave a suicide note before leaving this life? Police refused to give any information about the incident. John Osbilen's body was found in the garage just 3 days after his release from jail. The detective had no other information at the moment. Ed tried with all his might to come to terms with it. He went home and told his family what happened. The search for justice in Stephanie's case had reached a dead end, and he didn't know what to do next. The Parz family spent their first Christmas without Stephanie. And though enough time had passed since her disappearance, the parents didn't stop searching for their daughter. Over 87 days, relatives, friends, and volunteers checked 88 different locations in Freehold and its surroundings. Ed posted the meeting place and time for the search group on his page in advance. He warned people to dress warmly since it was cold outside, and searches could last until late evening. And finally, on Sunday, January 26, 2020, Stephanie was found. She was discovered by 2 young men from New Jersey, aged 17 and 18. They were walking along the highway shoulder to work when they suddenly noticed a mannequin in the bushes behind the guardrail. When the teens got closer, they realized it wasn't a plastic doll, but a dead human body. It was lying face down with arms raised, as if someone had accidentally fallen asleep on the ground under a tree. The guys immediately called police. Several emergency services responded to the call. Though the remains were only 5 to 6 meters from the road, drivers passing on the highway couldn't see what was in the ditch behind the guardrail. Only a random pedestrian could notice it. Because the highway was mostly traveled by cars, no one noticed the body below. A friend called Ed Parz and suggested turning on the news. The agitated father watched the place he had driven past dozens of times in the last 3 months. It was a known dump near the highway. It seemed like someone stopped on the shoulder and pushed the body down the hill. It rolled into the ditch, and a nearby tree hid it from view. The worst part was that this place was very close to the banquet hall where Ed and Charlene once got married, and where Stephanie, in a beautiful purple dress, had fun at her prom, and now she was dumped there like unwanted trash. Ed and Charlene called the 2 teens who found Stephanie angels sent there for a purpose. The young men themselves had heard about the girl who disappeared from her home on Halloween Eve, and were glad the family would finally get answers. The autopsy confirmed Ed and Charlene's worst fears. It really was their eldest daughter, missing for almost 3 months. Stephanie's body showed signs of severe decomposition since it had been outdoors and exposed to the elements. This prevented the medical examiner from determining the exact cause of death. However, given John Osbilen's history of accusations, it was assumed the girl died from asphyxiation. Investigators believed the ex-boyfriend John was responsible for Stephanie's death. Her death became the reason for John to take his own life. Now that Stephanie was found, detectives could finally close the case. John's parents denied their son had anything to do with the attack on Stephanie. They expressed condolences to the Parz family and presented the most likely reason their son committed suicide. In the mother's opinion, John was innocent. He couldn't handle the constant pressure and false accusations from others, as well as constant searches and suspicions from police. It's no wonder the father and mother believed their child's words. They never saw firsthand how he behaved alone with women. In a way, they can be understood because their confidence was based solely on their son John's words. Before the guy voluntarily put a noose around his neck, he left 2 handwritten notes. Ed and Charlene learned about this much later, when Stephanie's body was already found. The first letter was addressed to Mom and Dad. John apologized to his parents and wrote that he couldn't handle life behind bars. He also warned that most of what they would hear about him on TV was true. Osbilen admitted he was happy only once in his life, with a girl from New York who filed the restraining order against him. He asked that a photo of him with her be used at his funeral. The second message John addressed to that same girlfriend from New York. In it, he wrote that Stephanie caused chaos in his life and hurt him over and over when he needed support. He also said several unflattering words about Parz. The notes didn't mention where he hid Stephanie Parz's remains or directly say he took her life. However, detectives suspected that before this, John sent his parents several messages hinting at Stephanie's disappearance, or perhaps even confessed the crime to them. But the Osbilen spouses refused to provide police with that information. An investigation into obstruction of justice began. John's parents refused to cooperate with the investigation covering their son's memory, who had voluntarily gone to the other side. Stephanie's funeral was held at the Church of St. Rose of Lima. She was buried in a white and gold coffin. In tribute, Ed wrote an appeal to his daughter on his social media page. "Stephanie, my angel, sleep peacefully. Mom bought you a beautiful soft outfit and blanket to keep you warm. Today is a hard day. Baby, close your eyes and rest. See you later." These days were the hardest in the Parz spouses' lives. No parent should bury their child. Ed couldn't even look at his daughter's photo, fearing his strength would leave him. He tried to hold himself together to remain a support for Charlene and the other daughters. The man promised to ensure Stephanie's legacy lived on and she could help other women through her story. Of course, the Parz family's life would never be the same. However, mother and father are glad Stephanie is home now, and they can take care of her. On February 19th, 2020, the family gathered again to celebrate Stephanie's 26th birthday. They held a candlelight vigil attended by over 1,800 people wishing to honor the memory of the deceased girl. Ed Parz said that during the night vigil, the family noticed one bright star in the sky that made them feel like Stephanie was nearby watching over them. Investigators ultimately concluded that John Osbilen repeatedly used violence against Stephanie. Thanks to her amazing makeup artist talent, she knew how to hide the traces of his beatings. But when the family got involved, Stephanie made a firm decision to end the unhealthy relationship. John reacted by demanding even more control over the girl. Wanting her back, the guy started scaring Steph, thinking it would make her run back to his arms. When on Halloween, Eve Parz ignored Osbilen's message. He got angry and drove to her house. He acted as if they were still a couple. What happened inside the house can only be guessed. Most likely, it was a classic case of, if I can't have you, no one can. If John couldn't get Stephanie, he wouldn't let anyone else have her. After the attack, Osbilen dragged the body to the back door. To pull his car closer, he needed to move the girl's car. but he couldn't find her phone or keys to the Honda Sonata, so he turned on lights and searched every room in the house, the attic, and the basement. Finding the keys, John moved Steph's car to the driveway. He pulled up to the back door in his car to load the body unnoticed. All this was done under cover of night. Then Osbilen drove his car along the highway toward Staten Island, but halfway he turned around, caught on one of the road cameras. Most likely, John stopped the car on the shoulder, choosing a moment when no other cars were nearby. He discreetly threw Stephanie's body over the guardrail and continued to Clay Pit Ponds Park. Perhaps he wanted to mislead police and divert suspicion from himself. Or he just didn't want to go home yet. Ed Parz felt irresponsible for not protecting his daughter from the obsessive boyfriend. But what could a father do if Stephanie herself wasn't ready to press charges against John? In memory of their deceased daughter, Charlene and Ed founded the Stephanie Nicole Parz Foundation to help fight domestic violence and support families of missing persons. They help people facing similar problems, teach them safety issues. Ed enthusiastically tells parents how to react when their child reports violence from an intimate partner. Stephanie Nicole Parz achieved success in the online world. The girl also sought to realize herself as a devoted wife and responsible mother soon. But unfortunately, one dark, unchangeable person managed to destroy all her bright, high plans. If you have finished watching, you are a real fan of true crime. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the bell notifications, and put the like. See you in the next video.